There we go. Okay. My name is Jennifer Hill. I'm a dialogue coordinator for the Atlantic Institute. And the Atlantic Institute gives free online discussions in the hopes of creating a better global community. And tonight we are doing Artistry Across Borders, Navigating the Journey as a Foreign Artist in America. And before I introduce our speaker, I'm going to play a quick video for all of you about the Atlantic Institute. So let me do this real quick. Oh, I got somebody else. All right, here's our video.
The Atlantic Institute is a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting harmonious coexistence between peoples of various cultures, faiths, and backgrounds. We seek this goal through peaceful dialogue, education initiatives, and community organization. Our dialogue events bring together experts, community and faith leaders, and knowledge seekers to address social issues that affect us all. We feel dialogue is the most important element in peaceful coexistence, so we try and maintain several panel discussions, TED Talk events, and book clubs throughout the year. These events touch on social issues, race relations, and cultural understanding, and are a mainstay of our programming. The Atlantic Institute's education events are extremely important to our mission of understanding. We want to promote socially forward critical thinking to students of all ages. To that end, we have developed programs that seek to grow the creative spirit of students and help them think about their communities and the world around them. Our Future Leaders of Dialogue event brings together nominated elite students to learn from each other as well as political and business leaders. Our art and essay contest gives students a theme about important societal issues and allows them to create wonderful works of art and writing while steering their minds towards improving their world. We're always seeking ways to educate youths and adults in order to make a peaceful world for all of us. Our community events are designed to transform neighbors into friends and groups of people into a community. By associating with other nonprofits or by our own initiative, we are always trying to discover new avenues to improve our neighborhoods, places of worship, and community centers. We host cooking demonstrations of food from other cultures, work with various nonprofits to help elevate the work of others, and try to find a way to make the lives of those who are disenfranchised or marginalized better. Building a more peaceful world starts in our backyards, so we are dedicated to improving our communities and associations. The Atlantic Institute is always seeking like-minded volunteers and collaborators. If you would like to learn more, find volunteer opportunities, or just want to chat with our staff, please visit our website at www.atlanticinstitutesc.org or follow us on Facebook. We will never run out of fun, educational, peaceful events, so come join us to help make this world a better place full of understanding and unity.
All right. Thank you for that. All right. So now we are going to get started with our wonderful guest, Olga Yutno. I'm going to tell you a little about Olga before we get started, and I'm going to give the floor to her. If you have any questions while Olga's speaking, you can put it over in the chat, and then at the end, I'll ask those questions. Questions are welcome. Okay. Oh, it just happened here. So sorry, y'all. Okay, here we go. Olga Yutno is an artist originally from Pyatzagorsk, Russia. It was in Russia her passion for art began, inspired by the culture of her home country. She started by working with bastiks, stained glass, and enameling. She studied under world-renowned enamelist Nikolai Vyolkin for several years to hone her skills before moving to the United States in 2008. In the US, she no longer had access to tools needed to continue with her enameling and quickly started expanding into any and every new medium she could get access to. What she fell in love with was ceramic sculpting. It allowed her to experiment and fuse together old world artistry with her skills and abilities across a wide variety of art forms to create totally new and unique mixed media pieces. Currently, her work is a mixture of three-dimensional ceramic and mixed media wall pieces, figurative sculpture, and larger scale installation works. The process used to create many of her signature looks is achieved by hand pressing each individual impression into the clay using small custom-made metal tools. She hand makes all these tools herself out of repurposed architectural metal scraps. She also loves to incorporate found objects, as well as utilize techniques from other art forms she studied and practiced, such as weaving and metalworking. The result of this process, different incorporated elements and techniques, are what create her unique and visually interesting personal style. Her degree in psychology shapes the ideas and concepts behind many of her pieces, with the intention that observing her work encourages the viewer to think more about what they're seeing and the emotions it evokes. And I am up, and someone already just asked if you have social media, and I'm going to put Olga's Instagram over into the chat. But while I do that, I'm going to turn it over to Olga. Thank you for being here, Olga. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I wanted to say welcome and thank you for taking the time to join this conversation to every person who is here with us. I'm really excited to be able to connect with you guys. And also I wanted to mention that I absolutely love questions. So if you have any questions, please do ask because I think it will enrich our conversation. So as Jennifer mentioned, I've lived in the United States for almost 16 years now. And it has been a very fascinating journey. I would not say that it has been an easy one, but definitely the path worth taking. And I would like to share with you a little bit of what it has been like. Jennifer has suggested a couple topics that I focus on, so I will try to do my best to talk about it. But if there's anything in particular you would like me to mention, again, I'm completely open to suggestions. Uh, so my background is in metalwork. I was extremely fortunate back in Russia to be able to apprentice with a very well-known enamelist, Nikolai Mikhailovich Vdovkin. And he was the first person who really believed in my art and my abilities. And having his mentorship as a very young artist was a game changer for me. Just having somebody who you really look up to believing in you and supporting you can make all the difference. And he let us experiment. There were no trade secrets. He shared everything he knew with us. He wanted us to succeed and really set the bar really high for us to be able to do our own work. So I feel that not only in that particular case, but throughout my life, I have been extremely fortunate to come across people who had that generosity of spirit to be able to support people around them, younger people, other artists. And I do hope that I have been able and will be able to do the same for other people as well, because that's really important for me, because again, it has been a life-changing experience for me when I was younger and for many, many times after that. When I moved to the United States, I moved here with the full decision to be a well-known enamelist, and didn't quite work out that way because I realized that enameling was a very unknown art form here. It was used mostly for very small jewelry pieces, which was not what we were working on. We're working sometimes on very large work, sometimes architectural pieces that went outside of buildings or larger scale personal pieces. So not only could I not find the equipment, it turned out to be like a big challenge that I couldn't overcome financially, logistically, which was a lot, not a little bit disappointing. So also moving to a different country, if you move to a different country with the intention to stay, is extremely difficult and stressful. It's not a walk in the park. If you go abroad for a residency and you know that you'll be going back home and you're going for maybe a month or 2 or 3 or a year, just with the intention of doing your art, I think that can be a fabulous experience from start to finish, because the way I see it, you are still a little bit in a vacation mode. But if you move somewhere, it's a completely different story, in my opinion, and you have to do a lot more to be able to adapt and acclimate and understand how that particular society works. And it's a lot of effort, and it's not easy by any means. So it took me quite a while to figure out my way of returning to art. So I was actually not being able to do art for several years, and it was an extremely painful period for me because I wanted to, but it just, again, I was not in that place in my life where I was able to emotionally, financially, because again, everything I did before, had done before, just pretty much didn't exist really here. So at some point, I realized I needed to do something, and what I did find was a ceramic studio. And I tried to use the metalworking techniques I learned back home to work with clay, and taught myself how to do it, and just little by little developed my own style. And over the years, it grew and changed from small jewelry forms to wall pieces. And then I found what I'm really, really excited about is figurative art, which I feel that form of art really gave me my voice and my ability to express the ideas that are very, very important for me. So I was extremely fortunate to be able to do that. Meanwhile, I spend a lot of time learning different media because ceramics is my core medium. And I absolutely love it because it's one of the most, clay is just one of the most amazing materials. It's forgiving and not forgiving at the same time. You just can do so much. It has so much potential. But there are always a lot of other detours you can take that will still bring you to your goal, but will make the journey even more exciting. So I still love metalworking, and I constantly try to find opportunities to expand my artistic vernacular. My most recent fascination is with welding. I was able to start working to on welding small forms, and my goal now is to be able to find a way to learn to create larger welded pieces that I can later incorporate with glass and ceramics as well. So I'm usually drawn to combining multiple media together. So glass, glass mosaics, fused glass, or stained glass is very, very interesting to me and fascinating. Metalwork, as well as obviously clay, but I also try to do a lot of other things that catch my attention. One of my most recent spheres of interest, I would say, are artist books, because I feel that they combine a lot of things I really enjoy. They are wonderful vessels to convey important messages while being sculptural and complicated and unexpected. So I'm really drawn to that. So I really look forward to expanding my knowledge in the world of artist books. That's another goal I set for myself for this year. So welding and the artist books are my two 2024 goals that I'm really, really excited to pursue. So as I mentioned, when I moved here almost 16 years ago, I got a lot of opportunities to learn, and a lot of that is something I wanted to talk to you guys about. Is that one of the wonderful things about my experience of being an artist in the United States is that there are a lot of opportunities to improve your skills and better yourself. And I really feel that the United States is a fantastic place to have your creative freedom. And what I mean by that is, as Jennifer mentioned, my degrees are actually, I have an bachelor's degree in linguistics and master's in education psychology. So I do not have formal art education, even though I have apprenticed under well-known artists. I work with them. I have my own body of work, but that was all I did because that was my passion, but not my formal education. And in Russia, it would have been extremely, extremely hard for me to make my career as an artist because huge premium is placed upon having your formal education. And if it's not in art, it takes a tremendous amount of effort to really even try to get your foot in the door. So it's extremely challenging. I will never ever say that it is not difficult or challenging to start your career as an artist in the United States, but I do feel that it's the artistic community here is more accepting, and it's more based on your skills and what you can show for your work other than your formal education, which can be different. If you want to teach on a college level, then you need an MFA. But a lot of times I do not resist. I personally, I do not feel that my lack of an MFA or any degree that I might have gotten in Russia is hindering me in my pursuits here. So, and going back to that is the opportunity to learn. So for a very large portion of my life here in the United States, I have not had the financial means to be able to just sign up for a course in the area or medium I was particularly interested in, because a lot of times financial was out of reach for me. But what I love about so many art institutions here is that they have a lot of programs that support artists, and you can get scholarships and opportunities to study. So that was one of the ways I was able to really further my artistic practice, and it has been an incredible experience for me. One of my most important life experiences has been at the Penland School of Craft in North Carolina, where they do put a tremendous emphasis on making sure that the people who take classes come from diverse backgrounds, and people who cannot afford it sometimes, which again, the price tag is not cheap, but it's worth it. It's worth every minute of it. But they can still experience Penland, can learn, can become better as artists, can get inspired. So I think that is extremely valuable. And if you, obviously, I do not know who's watching this video, but if you ever feel that you would love to try something, but you really feel you can't, maybe you just cannot do it financially like I couldn't, or maybe it's an age thing, maybe it's something that you're just not comfortable with, I would really encourage you to look at different opportunities for what they call craft schools or schools of craft, for example, Pinland or Airmont, and check out their scholarship programs, because they have a tremendous variety of them. It's not only for students, it's they really gear towards having the most diversity, and that's one of the things I want to say over and over again. It can be a scholarship for people who are over a particular age, over 50, or for people who worked for artists who work in one medium and now want to shift to a different one. So for people in a particular field, for example, you're an artist working with books, or a metalworking artist. So again, don't limit yourself. If you have a dream, if you have a desire, try to find opportunities, because they are out there. And I'm a very good example to prove that you can grow and develop despite hindrances that might seem insurmountable at some points. So these are the really great things about my experience here. I also, in my life as an artist, I really felt deeply rooted in local communities and local organizations. Over the course of the last 16 years, I connected with quite a number of organizations in my hometown and the areas around. I would even travel to neighboring states and work with their community organizations, and usually it's art organizations, to see what they had to offer. And it has been an incredibly rewarding experience for me as well, because we have a lot of talent here, and just seeing what's out is just an inspiring experience, connecting with people from art organizations or organizations that can help you become a better artist. I know it's an unusual example, but last year I was encouraged to join an Ikebana club here in Columbia, South Carolina, which is an art form that I was not familiar with, but I just felt that just understanding the logic behind it and the approach to it made me a better artist. And the community was so welcoming. So again, that opened a new facet of exploration for me. I cannot see it being my main medium or dedicated my life to becoming a world famous Ikebana artist, but it was a tremendously valuable experience for me. So one of the things I would encourage you to do is just engage in as many communities as you possibly can, because it really paid off for me on professional level and also on personal level, because I met some of the most incredible people in some unexpected places and still have very treasured relationships with them. So that means a lot to me personally. So, but there are pros and cons. Jennifer asked me to talk about some hardships that I have faced along the way, and I don't want to focus on too many negative things, but a couple of things that were important for me is, one of the things, if you're a foreigner living and working in a different country, and an artist or a person of a different occupation, I think a lot of times you can face a situation where people have people you engage with can have a preset expectation of what your journey has been like. And they're not necessarily interested in getting to know what it actually is or has been. So they seem to know where you come from by just the name of your place of origin. And I have found that to be a very challenging experience, especially being Russian. That comes with a whole lot of different stereotypes and challenges. So, and learning how to interact with that and deal with that has been work in progress for me, especially in light of the recent events as well. And but I think that has been hard for me because sometimes it was enough for people to have that picture that they painted themselves without any input from me about what my life, what my experiences, what my thoughts were like. And sometimes when it was actually not the way it worked out, they were not that interested or sometimes even contradictory. And that was a surprising experience for me. So something I did not expect. And it took me quite a while to be able to grow to understand that and find a way to work with that because it did take growing a little bit of a thicker skin to be okay dealing with stereotypes or lack of genuine interest sometimes, which again, I am by no means saying that that's a rule, but it does happen often enough to where there's some sort of a pattern. And by nothing I'm saying is I would like to say that I'm not generalizing. Obviously, I'm only speaking to my personal experience. So, and every single person has their journey, and I'm just sharing something that works or didn't for me, which hopefully I feel that in my case, there are many more treasured moments and things that I appreciate than things that are negative. Um, Another thing I think that was a little bit challenging for me as a growing and developing artist here is that the difference of how we perceive different art forms and art media, and also the whole um, balancing act between what is art and what is craft. And I know that is not necessarily a very big discussion in maybe academia because that area is more open to experimentation with material. But on the more community level, I think there are some prejudices against sometimes against certain materials that automatically can put artists on a lower, so to speak, craft level. And for me, that was a very interesting and surprising aspect of perceiving artwork, because in my language, in Russian and in Russia, there's actually no such thing as craft and art, really. So anything is art. And there are different, I mean, if it's artistic, if you make sculptural brooms and they're really incredible. I know there's such a thing as gorgeous wedding brooms, which there's no way you're going to use them to sweep your floors. It's an heirloom that you're hopefully going to pass to your children and treasure, but that's art. But I've, again, in a lot of times, in my experience, I've faced situations where something that either I created or I just saw was immediately considered to be in the craft realm just because of the material that was being used, just because you were using clay or you're using wood or you're using metal. And that was very surprising to me. I think that is changing, but I think on the community level, there's still a lot of work to be done to change that. And surprisingly, a lot of times I get that prejudice not from art patrons, but actually from fellow artists. So that is really, really interesting for me that here there's this definite, like just almost like a system, like this type of art is more valuable or precious than that type of art. So because that's not what I was used to living in Russia. So that was an adjustment for me, and actually a very important thing for me because I don't think that that is an important criterion. So I think the quality of art, the message of art, the visual appeal, and again, art is subjective anyway. So I'm a bigger fan of calling something decorative art than craft or whatever other word or terminology we would like to use for that. Because again, there are too many opportunities for people to use the word craft in a demeaning way. And sometimes it's actually used quite intentionally that way. So I think that is an important point of education and conversation, because I think, in my opinion, a lot of times when we have a challenge, it's also an opportunity for growth. And again, not just getting your feelings heard, but maybe helping people understand that there's more, what your point of view is, and there's much more to it than might seem. Because a lot of times they don't necessarily mean to hurt somebody's feelings or be disparaging. It's just something they held this view because nobody has ever questioned that or brought a different side. So I always feel that if there is a con, there's a pro somewhere there. We might just need to work a little bit harder to find that, and to work with people to educate a little bit and to share our view on things. So I would like to mention my traveling experience. Jennifer suggested that I share that, and after that I would like to share some examples of my work, just a few. Because as everyone who's passionate about what they do, I can talk about my work for hours and hours, but I'm sure you guys will want to go on with your life. So I'll just show a few images. But first, I would like to talk about traveling because it has been a very important part of my life. I have been able to visit over almost 50 countries by now. And I mostly backpack, so I'm not independently rich, not at all. For me, I just find what the most important thing for me is, in comfort is not one of them, but being able to engage in cultural practices and see as much as I can is. So I have been able to travel on a very, very low budget, using such sites, but I would almost call it a movement as couch surfing, when you can stay with people around the world for free and connect with them. You can find people who have similar interests than you can. And I have gotten some of the most incredible life experiences doing that. I've been to many continents, many countries. I've seen incredible artwork in the most famous world museums, but maybe even more incredible artwork in some unexpected places. For example, when I was in Brugge or Bruges in Belgium, it's a picture perfect, this incredible, wonderful, teeny tiny town that's just absolutely gorgeous. Every little corner, every little building looks like it belongs in a fairy tale. But after a while, I got a little bit tired of the picture perfect downtown. So I decided to venture around, and somewhere I learned about a squat that was actually taken over by artists. So I found this, I went to the more neighbor, like to the outskirts of downtown, and I found this whole block that used to be a monastery that was then converted to a military base, that was then converted to a mental asylum, then there was later abandoned and taken over artists. And it was, again, built as a monastery, had a similar architecture of many stories, vaulted ceilings. It was a medieval building. And looking from the outside, you could not tell that it was an abandoned site, and or that it took the whole block. It just looked as picture perfect as everything else around it. So when I knocked and was greeted by a very sleepy and very surprised individual who probably had a very eventful night before that, who showed me around the whole building, because he was pretty surprised that I showed up on my own at 10 a.m. in the morning to their squat. And the level of artwork I saw in that building, monastery, military base, mental asylum art gallery now was out of this world incredible. Nothing that I had ever experienced before. It was just complete freedom and creativity and talent and inspiration. And I really felt I was transformed, like I was transported into a different world. And that is one of examples of a really, really unexpected but valuable memories that I made through my travels. I also believe that traveling personally made me a much, much better person, because over and over again, over the years of traveling, I witnessed firsthand that there are wonderful, kind and amazing people everywhere in the world. And if you need help, people will help you, people will support you. And just having that understanding that most people in the world are good, kind, helpful people who just want to share their love for where they live and their joy and their culture with you is, I think, a wonderful experience in its own. And I've I've been to many, many countries, and in every single place, I came across just the most impressive individuals who, in a lot of cases, I actually keep in touch with even now. So I went to Singapore, for example, about 8 years ago, and on a tour, met a lady, and we really started talking. And she was a local, but she was taking a tour of Singapore just to get to know her city better. And later on, when I took my husband on our honeymoon to Singapore, because I love Singapore so much, she actually gave us a tour of a nature reserve because we kept in touch. And it was a really special experience that inspired me in my artwork as well. And the reason why I bring it up is not because I get to see a lot of artwork, from museums to squats to public art to street art, which I'm a huge fan of. I actually have recently come back from Colombia, from Bogota, Colombia, and that city is one of the most artful cities I've ever I've been to. And you can see the most incredible street art around every corner. I thought that just Bogota was this art haven. It wasn't easy to navigate, so I did need to be careful and, again, mindful of where I was and what I was doing. But it was just such an amazing experience of seeing that level of talent and creativity. And you can find things of art, of culture, that will change your mind and your world in any place you will go, be it small or big. And that is, again, one of the biggest lessons I learned and took for myself from my travels. Um, I would like to show you guys a few examples of my work, and it's just a few images, just to show the scope of different types of artwork I do. Just give me 1 second. Okay. So hopefully it will go without any issues. So you should be seeing my first slide right now. This piece is called Sleeping Mind, and this is the first piece is in an ongoing series that is very, very important for me. It is, oh, here we go. So it is about this body of work deals with dementia, and it shows the life of people who live with dementia, but I focus a lot of attention on caretakers and the impact it has on their lives, the choices, the really, really difficult choices they have to make, the support or the lack of it from the society, the attitude of the society to people who live with dementia and the caretakers, and just a lot of different aspects that go hand in hand with having that condition. So this was the first piece. It's called Sleep in Mind, and it was inspired by the experience of my best friend whose mother unfortunately had dementia, and my friend and the whole of her family dedicated their lives to really take amazing care of the mother, and they cherished every moment and took it in stride, and they always found silver lining no matter how hard the situation was. And that alone was one of the most inspiring experiences for me, to witness how you can find joy and connection in even the saddest moments. So what happened one day was my friend's father's birthday, and they came to visit their mom, and she didn't remember who they were. She didn't remember their names at that point. But for that one day, just that moment, she woke up and she knew everyone. She knew their names. She knew that they were her daughters and her husband, and she was so, so happy. And when my friend shared that with me, I immediately had the image of this piece. And the idea is that there's a bell in the heart and the bell in the mind, and there's a very, very difficult path between them. It's not easy, it's not obvious, but it does exist. And maybe if the mind and the heart ring in unison, the bells in the heart and the mind, maybe they will wake up the sleeping mind and bring the person back to those who love this person. And as I created this piece, I actually got a lot of positive feedback from people, and a lot of people shared their stories with me. And I realized that it was very important for people to share what they have gone through, how they interacted with this situation, with this disease, with this condition. And I started working on creating more pieces and broadening this body of work. So I made an installation, and you should see the slide of it now. It's called A Very Long Goodbye, and now I named the whole project that A Very Long Goodbye. And the idea of it is, as you walk into the mind of the person who has dementia, at first they're just like, it's full of our memories, and you can see the images, the actual photographs from my phone that I took throughout the year that represent things that make me me, like the way I like my coffee, or I baked something I was very proud of it, or my favorite flower, or something I found amusing. So, and as every once in a while, all of us forget something, and you can see an occasional gap on the walls in our memories. But as you progress, the gaps become more and the memories become fewer. And sometimes, and at last, they become random and maybe don't make sense anymore. And if you look at the back wall, the whole wall is covered with clay plaques, and they also had hand dyed papers, and anybody who wished to could participate in this installation by sharing their experiences. And the fascinating thing for me was that I made quite a number of these papers, and my husband was making fun of me because he thought that I made too many. And after 3 days of the exhibition, the organizers called me and said that I was out of papers and I needed to bring more, which was not what I had expected. And I received over 400 notes, and they are raw and heartbreaking and honest and painful. And I really, really treasure them. And now I feel that this project is building itself, because I feel like I cannot keep those notes to myself because they don't really belong to me. So I am working on creating a series of artworks that illustrate some of the notes that have touched me the most, but also speaking to the idea that I mentioned before of creating artist books. I will not use the originals, but copies of the notes, to be able to share them with people through artist books, to give viewers insight into what living with dementia, or being a caretaker, or having a loved one with this condition can be like. Because I feel, again, I'm having a degree in education and being a big supporter of any form of education. I think it's very important to share experiences and help people understand, because we cannot just assume that people know what it's like. And again, every journey is different, and the more sides and facets of it we know, the richer our society will be. And I think the kinder and more empathetic we will become as human beings and as society. And I think it's tremendously important, and I would like my work to be a step in that direction to help people understand. So this is just one example. I've created many more pieces working with dementia, different choices, and again, what I mentioned. So my goal is to have the whole exhibition that showcases different conditions, different thoughts, different experiences. This is another example of one of the sculptures. It's called Finding the Way Home, because many people who live with dementia talk about the desire to go home, but they might be home, and you never know what exactly is meant when they say that. If it's their childhood home that they remember better, if it's a different idea of home they have, or maybe they're ready to go home, wherever that ultimate home is in their mind. So this is an example of how I interpreted that tricky and confusing journey. This example is called Alternative Storytellers, and the idea behind it is, you can see that the sculptural piece with 3 faces, is placed on a pedestal of books, and you can see that the titles of the books were quite carefully selected and curated. And the idea of this piece is that, of this multimedia piece, again, working with books and pages, as well as figurative sculpture, is the further we get from the truth, the uglier the face of the storyteller and the story gets. And that is represented by this piece, and going from almost doll-like idyllic face to the uglier and uglier face of the person who veers too much from the truth to pursue their own goals and agendas. This is one of my most recent installations. It's focusing around the problem of the opioid crisis. It's called For the Masses, and it talks about people's experience with opioids. A lot of people who deal with the addiction, especially from the opioids, come to that through personal trauma and sometimes through surgeries or physical traumas, and they already have a lot going on. And you can see that the person is standing, the bust of the person, on the pedestal full of used containers, and they're overflowing with them as well, dealing with their, like, using them as a crutch to deal with their pain, be it physical or emotional. And higher you can see a tiny person who's being squished between their own pain and also the very well organized and very purposeful pyramid that's pressing on them to take advantage of their pain and their vulnerability by the big pharma that unscrupulously takes advantage of the weakness of people when they're in the hardest conditions they probably have been. And you can see that the orange of the prescription bottle spreads its tentacles further and further. But if you look further, you can see, if you look deeper, you can see that all of it is supported by greed and by the desire to take advantage of our weakness and our vulnerability to make money, which is, I think, the biggest crime in that situation. This is another example of huge bells that I made that talk about things that move us. And this installation is called What Makes Us Ring. And I talk about different things that are key impetuses for us in our life, like love or fear, power. So, and this is an example. The next slide is an example of my work with different media, not just metal and glass and ceramics, but here the figurative sculpture melts together with the traditional way of making pine needle baskets. But I wanted to make it my own and make this elaborate and intricate hair dress, because I'm also very fascinated with the idea of beauty and what we perceive as beautiful and how different cultures adorn themselves. Again, that also goes back to my traveling and seeing wonderful things that women do with their hair, the jewelry, the adornments that I think are absolutely wonderful in every single culture. This is an example of one of my early installations. It's called Meditations, and it consists of over 80 mandalas. Each of them was a unique piece of art, and I used my favorite techniques to create the centerpiece, the meditation pole. And here are a few examples of my public artwork. So this is the very first piece. It's actually fairly large. It's 4 feet by 4 feet, and it's double-sided, and it's decorated with mosaic pieces made out of stained glass and hand-sculpted ceramics. And public art is something that I'm particularly interested in right now. I'm also moving in that direction, not instead of, but in addition to the work I currently do, because this is just a very, very exciting new direction for me, because I think it's wonderful when we can see beautiful things in our everyday surroundings. And my passion and vision is to have more beautiful pieces of art in very day-to-day places where we can, not just downtown where we go on business, but maybe next to your grocery store, or having your public transport, a public bus stop being beautiful adorned. And that is very important for me, because I think the more we encounter art and the more beautiful our regular day-to-day surroundings are, the more we'll appreciate it and maybe make our life and space around us more beautiful. This is another example of public art where I celebrated the beauty of Lake Murray, which is very close to where I live and is known for its incredible wildlife. And this is a combination of also hand-sculpted high-relief ceramic pieces that are mosaiced along with stained glass. And this is another piece where I sculpted every single flower from life flowers. So I actually went to my garden, mostly to my garden, but also to the botanical gardens, and did little sketches in clay. I gave myself only 1 hour to do one flower, and it was a very interesting challenge. I like to give myself challenges and um, see what I can do with that. And the flowers progress from early spring through late spring to mid summer. That's when I stopped that project, and that was finished last September. Now it was a really, really interesting experience for me. So this is just a few examples to show you all different directions I like to take with my work, and I really appreciate this opportunity. If you would like to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram or on Facebook. It's Olga Yukno Studio. And I would love to get any questions if you guys have any questions for me.
Olga, this is amazing. I'm so inspired by your work, always have been, but I'm so inspired by your work and just you as a person. Like you're awesome. And also I feel like you've reignited my wanderlust, my travel lust, just by hearing you talk about all your traveling. It's amazing. I know I did 50 countries. Like that's so amazing. In the chat, people just talk about your work is beautiful. It's thought provoking. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, in these last few minutes, if anybody wants to add any more questions, I was wondering about do you have a studio at your house, or do you work like where do you create?
That's an excellent question. Most of my artistic career, I actually worked out of community studios, which I'm also a big fan of. I think, and that's another thing that the United States really has a lot to offer. There are a lot of spaces where people can work collectively, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity to connect with like-minded people and grow as an artist, or just have a space, even if you just want to get started and see if it's something for you, because sometimes we think it is, but it might not be as exciting as it had seemed at first. So for many years I worked in various community studios. Now I have a studio at home, but I also choose to still work, excuse me, in a community studio as well. Just it's one of those things that what you think is not exactly what it ends up being. I love having my own studio. I adore it. It's a very special place for me, and my husband has been extremely supportive in helping it to exist and setting it up. But I also realized I was feeling very isolated. So when
Mm.
I finally got my dream come true, I realized I was just really missing the connection with like-minded people. So I teach sculpture at Columbia Art Center, and I choose to do quite a lot of my work there as well, because it just means a lot to me to be around people and share with them and communicate with them. And it's really important for me. So I kind of split my time between several studios, and I really like it that way.
Yeah, I say that seems like a really great way to be about it, because I find when I'm being creative, yeah, I can just hole away all by myself. And then simple thing of like just getting together with a couple of friends and working on some projects together can really reignite my creativity. So yeah, I definitely feel that. Um, my network bandwidth is low. Wonder what that means.
Absolutely. And I'm
Oh.
just a very big fan of really connecting with communities, as I mentioned, and it can be your local community, art community. And I think it's my personal opinion, but the more little pockets of interest you can possibly find, the more exciting and rich your life is going to be. So I try to really do that. And my husband jokes that I only have one hobby, which is collecting hobbies, because and it sometimes they seem a little bit random, but in the big picture, they all come together. I'm a big fan of foraging, and I like to learn about the natural world. And it does seem to be very different, but also if you do that, you find appreciation for like the added appreciation for the natural world. And guess what you can find in the natural world? A lot of art supplies. And that's where your pine needle basket weaving comes in. And then you decorate it with acorns, or you find the most incredible lichen and moss, and then you learn that you can actually dye fabric or yarn using that as your dye source. And again, the possibilities are endless, and that's one of the most exciting things for me as an artist, is that there's so much to learn. Like there's no end to learning. There's always something around the corner that excites you and ignites your desire to keep going, and I think it's just one of the most beautiful things.
Oh, that's so inspiring. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. It's not as complicated as we make it sometimes. You know, your backyard is filled with some art supplies. Like I need to remind myself of that. Oh, and I also really connected to your kind of frustration with in America of like the difference between art and crafts and them not being this difference, which I've been frustrated with that myself in the past. And I wish it wasn't such a separation that people try to make between these two things, you know. It's just art. So that was really interesting to hear you talk about that. So I have more comments just about how beautiful your work is, and thank you so much for sharing and how inspirational. Yeah, thank you so much, Olga. This is wonderful. I'm going to be thinking about this for a while. I love the concept that integrates nature. Somebody else said that as well. Um, so yeah, I put Olga's, I know she put it up, but I put her Instagram into the chat. So please go check that out. Give her a follow. Is there anything you want to add here at the end, Olga?
Well, I really just wanted to thank all of you for joining us for this conversation and for being supportive of artists, because I think, like, for me personally, there are some times that the smallest acts of kindness to me as a person and me as an artist made a huge impact for me, because you never know what the person is going through. And I still remember that. So I think, like, that's just the note, this is the thought I would like to leave with, is just how grateful I am to all of those people who were supportive and kind to me in big or small ways. And I've been very fortunate to have a lot of these experiences. And I really hope that each and every one of us will have more of them and will be the person sharing these experiences with others too. So I think that's a good note to end on.
Oh, I love that. That is a wonderful note to end on. And someone just said here, you have such very interesting insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're all, I'm so appreciative of you for being here, sharing your gorgeous work and your perspectives. And it was really inspiring. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us. Yep, just more people talking about just how great it was to hear you talk about all your opportunities you've had with art and travel, and thank you for sharing your time with us. I totally agree. So thank you so much. I think that's going to wrap it up for us tonight. Thank you for joining us. I'll be doing another discussion next month about Holi, the Hindu celebration of color, on March 25th. So look out for that. But thank you all so much. I'm going to stop recording. Have a wonderful night. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye.